Hello everyone, this is lecture 11 and in this lecture we'll learn about the quality of raw materials and other ingredients. So now what is raw materials? So in general we sometimes think that raw materials are produced by the farmers. Raw materials we get the raw materials from the directly from the agricultural field. But in industry the raw material is defined as any material that is transformed by processing, packaging, and or storage into a food product. So, considering this, for the industry, one company's finished products may be another company's raw material or ingredients. Okay, so that's why a industry, they must have to follow certain uh, procedures when they collect or accept the raw materials from the supplier of the raw materials. Okay, so that means they have to consider the purchase, the receipt, and processing of related raw materials by that company. Okay, everything need to be considered by the by the industry who process those raw material to ensure uh, the production of good quality finished products. Okay, so that's why the ingredients which are not directly controlled by the uh, final company, they need specifications for that ingredients or raw materials are needed. Okay, so what is a specification? I'll tell you about this later. So now, I mean, usually, what should be the characteristics or what quality the raw materials or ingredients should have? These are there are guidelines by the local authority or international organizations. Okay, so like for example, in case of USA, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, they have written guidelines for every ingredients which are used in the food industry for raw materials. Okay, so if a food industry they want to use any ingredients or raw materials, they must have to follow the guidelines of FDA, whether those ingredients have the standards of quality or identity uh, mentioned described by the FDA. Okay, so FDA is for USA organization. Every country actually they have their own guidelines, and sometimes many companies they follow international guidelines. Say for example, many company in Bangladesh they are nowadays follow ISO guidelines. So ISO guidelines also have this kind of a standard description. Okay, so anyway, so different guidelines described by different organizations, there may be some uh, differences. Okay, differences of standards of quality of the ingredients. However, there are some general expectations about the ingredients. So what are those general expectations? So the ingredients should be non-toxic with respect to chemicals, should be certainly free from harmful contaminants and residues of previous processing, should be manufactured from high quality raw materials harvested and or processed in a manner consistent with maintaining their quality and wholesomeness, should meet all government criteria for standards of quality and safety, and these also should be correctly identified, properly packaged, and properly shipped to the purchaser or to a designated destination. So these are some general characteristics that the ingredient should have. Okay, now let's go back to the specification. We already heard that the ingredients which are not directly controlled by the final company, there should be, those ingredients should have some specifications. So what is a specification? Okay, so a specification describes what the ingredient should be. It defines the raw material not only in terms of wholesomeness but also in terms of its identity and even its performance in the final product. Okay, so the specifications should be very clear, should not be very long. I mean, it should be concise and complete, and it must be written so that they are flexible but rigid enough to useful. I mean, the specification, they should be written. Okay, oral is not enough, they must be written. Okay, so now the specification, they should contain some general statement about that ingredients. So what are those general statements? These are, so the seller agreement that product is not adulterated or misbranded. Okay, the seller should clearly mention it in the agreement. Okay, the right to inspect manufacturer's plant during processing of ingredient. Okay, actually, I mean, if the final company, they want to inspect the ingredient processing manufacturing plant, they should have that right, an indication that only materials produced in approved plant locations will be acceptable. Okay, so say for example, the manufacturer, they have agreed that they will supply you the raw material which is processed in, suppose, Rajshahi. Okay, so you have the right to reject the ingredients if it is not processed in the Rajshahi plant, in other plant. Okay, then a statement that the buyer must be notified if seller changes any content, methods of manufacture, place of manufacture, or method of shipment. Okay, so if the supplier change anything of this, they must have to inform the company, the receiver company. Okay, the seller must ship the vehicles that are clean and specified for the shipment of food. Okay, so I mean, if the seller have to ship the ingredients in 4 degrees Celsius, they should ship the products maintaining the 4 degrees Celsius. I mean, they should use those kind of vehicles, refrigerated vehicles. They cannot ship those ingredients in normal vehicles without any refrigeration facility. Okay, and the test results done by the producer company or manufacturer company. I mean, the producer or manufacturer company, they also do several tests with the raw materials that they use. Okay, so this test results should be available for the buyer. I mean, the buyer have the right to check this test results and have these test results. Okay, and the materials used are which are used must be identified by lot in accordance with system specified by the purchaser. Okay, now let's talk about the plant inspection. I mean, okay, so I mean, in the general statement, we found that one statement, there is one statement that the buyer, they have the right to inspect the manufacturer's plant. Okay, so what those inspection includes? So the raw material suppliers will permit sanitation inspections of their premises, that means of their plant, by representative of their customer. I mean, the customer can send their own sanitation inspectors to inspect the sanitation maintained by the raw material processing plant. Okay, and it is recommended that the inspection be conducted to coincide with the actual production of one's own ingredients. The inspection should emphasize the need to share ideas to examine the process from a slightly different perspective than the company itself might have. And if the inspector, they make any criticism, those criticisms should be constructive and limited exclusively to sanitation. Okay, I mean, their criticism should be constructive. I mean, okay, and discussions on inspection findings are best held after the audit and should be followed with a letter reiterating and formalizing complaints. Okay, so that if the inspectors have want to file any complaint or they have any suggestions to made, they should be written. Okay, they should inform the manufacturer through a written letter. Okay, and the supplier will welcome the inspector's input and react to it positively if the comments are constructive. I mean, the supplier also should be open-minded. Okay, they should take inspectors' comment and input positively if those comments or recommendations are constructive. Okay, Okay, then supplier certification. Okay, so supplier certification means, for example, say you are the final product producer. Okay, so you should have a list of manufacturers certified to supply each raw material. Okay, so that means I mean, if you are the final producer, you may have to collect raw materials from different manufacturers. So sometimes, say suppose you need 10 different raw materials and you're collecting those 10 raw materials from 10 different manufacturers. Okay, it's okay, it's good, but one thing is that for one raw material, you should not solely depend on one manufacturer. Okay, so you should have the list which record the name of those manufacturers who produce the same raw material. Okay, in that case, actually you will have the you will have the bargaining capacity, and also, like, anything happen to that one manufacturer, then you can collect the raw material from another manufacturer. Okay, I mean, anything can happen, disaster can happen, right, to your manufacturer. So okay, so anyway, you should have that list of manufacturers, certified manufacturers. Okay, and a copy of this list should be consulted by the purchasing department when buying ingredients. The supplier should be required to submit a sample for appropriate microbiological, chemical, and performance testing, as well as agreeing in writing to the points specification. Okay, I mean, although the manufacturers may be are certified, still before purchasing you should collect some sample. You should collect the sample from those suppliers and test them. Okay, every kind of test should be done: microbiological, chemical, performance, all kind of tests should be done before purchasing the raw materials in bulk amount from them. Okay, and approval should relate to specific plants from which specific products are purchased. Reports or inspections, I mean, all those reports should be maintained in company's file for 2 years or until a subsequent inspection is completed. So it's depend. Okay, so it actually depends on the company. Some company may require that the product should be I mean, the report should be stored for 5 years. Okay, it depends. Okay, okay, now ingredient inspection. Okay, so say you are the final producer, and you have the certified I mean, you collect your ingredients from certified manufacturers, and they also provide all the test data and proper specifications. Yet whenever you receive the raw materials from the supplier, those raw materials should be properly inspected. Okay, they should be inspected as the guideline. Okay, as mentioned in the guideline. Okay, so the inspection of raw materials begin with their arrival at the plant. Okay, and so what I mean, what inspections should be done with the raw materials? The determination that they are properly labeled, and the gross contamination should be determined. I mean, if there is any field debris, insect, evidence of rodents, etc., and the containers of raw materials that have been opened or damaged should be checked for contamination and carefully released if their contents appear to be in satisfactory condition. Okay, and presence of during audit, presence of only one or two infesting insect may indicate that the entire shipment has been infested, so the whole lot can be rejected. I mean, say the supplier sent you 100 containers, and you randomly checked 10 containers, and in one or two containers you find contamination, infesting insect. Okay, then actually you have the right to reject all those 100 containers, because if one or two containers is contaminated, there is high chance that the other containers may also be contaminated. Okay, anyway, after receiving the raw material, some simple chemical test can be performed to determine the presence of undesirable pesticides in foods. Actually, not only chemical test. Usually, the industry do all kind of tests, like the chemical test, physical test, biological test. Okay. Okay, so while inspection and analysis are taking place, the product should be under very tight control to prevent its being used in uh, advertently. So, for example, your raw materials should be kept in 4 degrees Celsius in aseptic conditions. So now, while you are inspecting those raw materials, you should maintain that storing conditions. Okay, you should, like, if it should be stored in 4 degree, you should store it 4 degree. Okay, if it needs aseptic condition, you should keep it in aseptic condition. Such things. Okay. Now, the raw materials containers. Okay, actually, the containers should have some retained characteristics. Okay, so the raw materials may arrive at plant in bulk containers such as tanks, cars, drums, bags, cartons, baskets, trays, or cans. And from the sanitation point of view, the container should contain the following, should maintain the following points. I mean, the container should have these characteristics. So the container must be free from rips or tears. I mean, the container should not be damaged. Okay. Then damaged packets should be examined and repaired. Spilled product should never be returned to its container. I mean, if anything is spilled out from the container, we should never take them back into the return them into the container. Okay, never ever. Covers or caps should be removed only immediately prior to removing or emptying the container, and container should be cleaned properly after emptying. Okay, I mean, after using the container, we just cannot throw them away. They should properly cleaned. Okay. Now, after we have, I mean, you have uh, properly inspected the raw materials, then you need to store them. Okay, so different ingredients, they have to be stored differently. Okay, so usually in the containers, I mean the raw material containers, they will have all these kind of instructions written in there. Okay, so in what condition we have to store that ingredients. Yet it's good to have some idea about the ingredients and their recommended storage conditions. Okay, so for example, the grains should be stored in moisture controlled area, because otherwise, if there is moisture, microbes, especially fungus, grow on the grains. Root vegetable, they may sprout and or undergo damaging internal composition changes. So this root vegetable are usually uh, stored in cold temperature. Okay, and in moisture and also in moisture control cold temperature. Fruits may deteriorate at high temperature, so should be stored in cold temperature. Spices, okay, so although the spices, they are less likely to get I mean destroyed by microorganisms, but yet many insect, they can attack the spices and damage them. Okay, so I mean we should protect the storage facility from insect. Nuts should be stored at refrigerated temperature in covered containers. Beans must be cleaned before storage. Meat, fish, and dairy products, they should be stored in refrigerator or freezer. Okay. Okay. Finally, the detection of foreign materials in the ingredients. Well, usually, as I said, that you already know that ingredients, they are subjected for different chemical, physical, and biological tests. Okay, but other than these expiry tests, some inspection methods are followed to detect macro level contaminants. So for example, ingredients, especially the raw materials collected from, I mean the raw materials collected from the agricultural field or other manufacturers may contain pieces of metal. Okay, so this metal can be I mean this metal can contaminate the food from the agricultural materials or the from the machineries used in the raw material processing. Okay, so the metal should be detected by using a metal detector, and also they should be visually inspect through through letting them go over the belt. Okay, to check for macro level contaminants. Okay, and there are also other methods like except the in addition with the metal detector or visual inspection like sound, especially ultrasound, photoelectrical devices, lasers. They are also used to detect foreign materials in the raw materials. Okay, anyway, that's all for lecture 11. Thank you for your patience.